Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for chiming in tonight. As you can see, I am not at my house tonight. I had a shift to put in at the Tool Library and wasn't going to make it home on time to get set up. So we're here at the Tool Library interviewing. We're going to be doing part of our federal candidates interview around issues affecting our city here in St. John. And tonight we've got Wayne Long. So before we get into the interview, just as a note, last time we had a fair few comments come in, and people had questions, and I've gotten a few questions from email, and I've framed a little bit of this conversation tonight around some of the feedback that I was getting. But again, the goal of tonight isn't. It really is just to take the issues that are affecting the ballot box, I guess we call it, of this federal election, the things that are top of mind, that are on the party platforms, and discussing them with the party representative, our candidates, and seeing how they'll trickle down, seeing how they'll impact St. John from those perspectives. And so we've got about 7 or 8 questions. If you have a comment or a question and you put it in the box, I will definitely try to get to it. This is not a time to try to. There's no gotcha moments here. It's not a time to run anybody through. Any negative comments. This is a time to discuss the ideas, the issues, and the trajectory, and what it will mean for our city. So that's where I'm going to keep it. So if you have comments, questions, by all means, if we can get to them, we will. And I'm just going to bring Wayne. I'm just going to check the socials feeds here, make sure everything's streaming good. Everything looks good. Everything's up and running. Perfect. So just going to bring our guest on tonight, our Member of Parliament and candidate for the Liberal Party, Wayne Long. Hey, Wayne.
Hey, Brent. How are you? Thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you for doing this. You were out in the rain today on door knocking, so I'm glad you think that this is a valuable endeavor for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you know what? Like Alan Doyle said at Area 506, what's a little rain, right? So
exactly.
We went out. We were at East St. John and west at Mansfield Apartments. Real quick story about Mansfield Apartments. I grew up in West Side, and I grew up on Mansfield Street, just up from the apartments.
Yep.
The Mansfield Apartments was my paper route.
Oh, yeah.
And I knocked on a door, and there's a guy living there who was still there. He's still there when I was, like, he was there. Like, I'm 58 years old. I don't know when I had my paper route, probably, I don't know, 13 or 14. He's still there. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mr. I won't say his name, but he's still there.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful. So yeah, we obviously lots of rain and wind today in St. John, but well, a little umbrella, a few apartments here and there. And as you know, it's important to connect with constituents. So we're out knocking on doors, spreading our message as best we can. And look, I know you made some comments at the start about, gotcha moments or hard questions. I mean, look, I don't consider myself a political veteran, but I'm asking for a third term. So you know what, whatever questions are asked, bring them on. I'm here to talk with you and certainly talk and dialogue with constituents in St. John Russet.
Well, you've certainly made yourself available as an MP, Wayne. So this is not out of character for you. I know it's not your first rodeo on this stuff, but I do. Yeah, I just curious. Like, actually, that's a good segue there. I guess 2 questions. One, how are you doing in this election, and then 2, coming out of 2 terms, what made you decide, or I guess when did you say to yourself, yeah, I'm going to stick around for a third, and why?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously I started in 2015. We had a majority, so I had 4 years. Then in 2019, I went back. I mean, the reason I wanted to get into politics was I just felt, I had a taste of student politics at UNBSJ. I was student union vice president there, external, and loved being an advocate. Love getting out, representing the university and dealing with issues. And, certainly learning that, as we all know, it's easy to make easy decisions, but it's not easy to make difficult decisions where you can't please everybody. So, I kind of got the political bug there. Want to get back into politics. I mean, obviously my boys are of an age now where they're growing up. They're young men. My wife Denise is very supportive, so I want to get into politics. And obviously you learn a lot, as I'm sure you're learning a lot in your first month or two at council. What works, what doesn't work, what buttons you can push, what buttons you shouldn't push or you can push, but what repercussions does that have? And, always looking at the big picture. So, first term, learned a lot, learned how things worked. Second term, a lot more focused. But in the end, I was determined to change how people looked at politicians. I think you're doing that too. And, I was told in the early days, Brent, you got to change who you are. You need to wear a shirt and tie all the time. You need to act a certain way. You can't wear your jeans anymore. And God forbid, don't ever be seen walking into a liquor store to buy a case of beer because people will judge you. And I was kind of like, well, that's not who I am. That's not what I want to be. And that's not what people want to see in politicians. People want to see people that are like them. That are accessible, that are available, that are passionate, not always agreeing or, not always having the right answers, but being there, being available. We moved our constituency office to Market Square because it's accessible and people can see us. So, I was determined to try to change that viewpoint and get stuff done for the region. I mean, obviously it's an election. I don't want to be overly partisan tonight, but I wanted to bring leadership politically in Ottawa, an advocate for St. John Rothesay, and get up there and fight for our share of funding, fight for things that I'm passionate about, represent the riding in a way I know people in the riding would want to be represented. And I know it's cliche and we all use it, but, I want it to be the riding's representative in Ottawa and not Ottawa's top-down representative down here. And, if that meant voting against government or voting for, voting against back-to-work legislation, which I did with obviously the postal workers and I did with the ILA or the port workers in Montreal.
Yep.
I would do that. So, I felt compelled to lead. I had a great career with the St. John Sea Dogs, obviously, quickly learned that being with the Sea Dogs and sports is a beautiful thing for our community. And the St. John Sea Dogs are a beautiful thing for our community, but sports is an all uniting thing for our region. Whereas politics, you're either liberal or you're green or you're NDP or you're, conservative or PPC or what have you. And some people make up their minds or don't like you just based on the party you represent. So I have tried my best. I feel I've gotten into it for the right region. And why am I offering for a third term? Because there's still things I want to complete. There's still projects I want to see through. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting any younger. And, I've certainly talked about this openly that, I also want to, in a third term, I want to give younger leaders voices. I want to help them find their way. And I mean this, whether they're, again, green or NDP or conservative or what have you. I want young leaders to start expressing themselves more. I mean, we certainly have a lot of young leaders coming up in this community, and that's how we're going to grow. Mm-hmm. So I want to, be that vehicle to give them a way to, express their views also. And, I'm focused on trying to win that third term and keep the riding in the progressive ledger. And some people would say, well, you're not a real progressive. I take exception to that. I mean, nobody's going to define what I am as a progressive. We all know that St. John Rossi in the past has been known as, well, it's a conservative riding. It's the riding of Elsie Wayne. I don't agree with that anymore. I think the riding is quickly changing. Somebody like Brent Harris can be elected to council, somebody like Joanna Kilm or David Hickey, or look, Wayne Long. Like I'm the longest consecutive serving Liberal MP in the riding's history. Think about that.
Yeah.
That's 6 years. So I've got a lot of work to do. I've got lots of worthy opponents this time. And I'm just going to continue to be me, do what I do best, challenge my other competitors on their viewpoints and their ideologies. And you know what? I don't think it's any secret that it's going to be a very, very close race here in St. John Rossi, and I'm just doing the best I can.
Right. Well, yeah, I know it's one to your point just about the types of people that can get elected. It really is. It's and you say you're not going to let other people define you and say you're not progressive or you are. I mean, I've encountered that myself. I've been quote unquote. I've been canceled by people on either side of the spectrum, or accused of being a phony on either side of the spectrum. Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's funny. I was just reading in a book the other night. It's a book by Noah Harari, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And, he talks about, it's such a cliche thing now in some ways, but he talks about the role of technology in taking us away from our senses and taking us away from our relationships.
Right.
And I see it, certainly it's not like you can't see in history, Justin Trudeau's father back in the day, or Brian Mulroney back in the day, where they were, but it just seems like every time we turn around, there's more vitriol in politics, and we need people who are going to rise above that and say, you know what, bring it on. I'll talk to you. If you're gonna, I saw Dominic Carty and our PPC candidate to get into it on King Street the other day, and whether or not I agree with that situation, Dominic Carty, played his part and he stepped up. So, and he wanted to engage with it, and he didn't walk away. He didn't run away. And anyway, I appreciate your candor on that. On that, just give me 1 second here, Wayne.
No problem.
I'm realizing that my battery wasn't plugged in. It was plugged into the wall, but it wasn't plugged into my computer here. And now I'm getting a warning on my battery.
Well, actually, I'm
There we go.
I'm looking at my battery too here. It says 3%, but anyway, I'm going to see where I'm at. Okay.
Hopefully we don't lose it.
Yeah, sometimes, you just get it right when, I've got people on the right side of the spectrum calling me a lefty. And then I got people on the left side saying that I'm not a real lefty. I'm conservative. So it's just kind of like, you know what, I do it. I do the best I can. I be me. And, so far, so good. So far, so good.
Yep. All right. So let's I want to get into some of the issues, St. John published a position paper. Yeah. And it was basically a synopsis of, what we're encountering here in St. John and what we're hoping for from our next government, or at least what we're hoping to achieve in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who has a bit of insider information. I don't know if you can call it that, but I'm privy to some insider information that is fairly public. It's not like it's that insider, but as the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, I'm looking at some of these strategic pieces that we've had lots of plans, we've had lots of studies done for the city of St. John over the past 6 years, but now we're starting to put it into pen paper to say, here's what we want to achieve, and here's the time frame we want to achieve it for whatever items. And so that position paper is kind of informed by that. But what do you think? There's a range of issues in there, but what do you think is achievable going into a third term, whether it's whether it's a liberal majority, liberal minority, or conservative minority, I think
Yeah.
those are the three only options there are. I mean, that's my assessment on where things are going.
Yeah.
But at whatever level that we get, what do you think is achievable for our city that okay, I'm walking into Ottawa and come what may, I can achieve this?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the biggest thing that I'm advocating for is more direct federal funding for the municipality. And, one of my biggest frustrations was when I first got started, and I had to learn this as I kind of went along, is that the province oversees so many things that I really wasn't aware of initially. And I mean, obviously, the province, there's a constitution, but the province has jurisdiction over healthcare, education, housing. And, the federal government is there mainly through bilateral agreements to, fund money, through the province to municipalities, to nonprofits, what have you. So one of the greatest things that I'm advocating for is more direct federal money for municipalities to go around the province, if you will, and put money in the hands of municipalities. And case in point, it's called the Community Infrastructure Fund now, but it used to be called the gas tax money.
Yep.
And we have doubled that money to St. John.
Yep.
And that's direct money that the city can use for, basically really what they want, but mainly infrastructure, roads and sewers, community buildings, repairs. So we've doubled that.
Mm-hmm.
Through the green infrastructure and other funds, we are now making it available that municipalities can apply directly for that funding and not have the province have to match it or put in money. Mm-hmm. Very frustrated, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, is in the housing side, the affordable housing side. We know we're basically in an emergency, and we are in a major crisis with respect to affordable housing. Mm-hmm. Yet, the conservative government, the provincial progressive conservative government, is sitting on tens of millions of dollars unspent. Mm-hmm. Because through a bilateral agreement, they get to, as I've said before, we will put money or we will put gas in the car, but the province has to turn the key to spend that money. And it frustrates me beyond belief that because, and it's a lot of it is ideology, but because, the premier doesn't want to spend and he's in, very restrained, that money sits there. Mm-hmm. So, we've advocated for and started two initiatives. One's called the Federal Co-Investment Fund and the Rapid Housing Initiative. Mm-hmm. We've pledged to double the Federal Co-Investment Fund and the Rapid Housing Initiative. That is monies that can go directly to municipalities, to projects that the province doesn't have to be involved with. Case in point, we're not there yet. We're rounding third base, and actually we're closer to home plate, but the St. Vincent's project. Yep. The St. Vincent's project is a perfect example of a project that is going to be funded through the Rapid Housing Initiative. Mm-hmm. The province won't have any money invested into that project. They may commit some rent subs. But as far as direct large investment, the feds can do that directly with the proponent. And obviously, Kit Hickey at Housing Alternatives is, the proponent of that project. They've applied to the Rapid Housing Initiative. And, I can't tell you it's done, but I can tell you that it's rounding third base and closer to home plate. It will be done without certainty. We've got $10 million federal dollars directly into the Wellington project. Yep. St. John Nonprofit Housing Project. That project would not happen without direct federal money. $10 million into that project. We had, $3.8 million into the Victoria Street project. Do those projects in itself solve the affordable housing problem in St. John? God, no. Not even close.
Do you think, Wayne, on that topic, so I hear what you're saying and it is one of these priorities for for the city. For our position paper, we said, look, there are a lot of federal programs that, I mean, look at transit, for example. There's millions of dollars left on the table because the province wasn't willing to commit into it.
Right.
And, look, I'm not going to bash Premier Higgs.
No.
He, like you said, he has an ideology, has an approach to this. And best I can gather, without picking the man's brain here on live Facebook and Twitter and whatever, it seems to be that his belief is that the market needs to sort that out. And if we get too far ahead of the market, we run into fragility in our business case for whatever the thing is. And okay, that's the most gracious terms I can put it in, but that's based on my read. So, but the transit is one where it's like, look, there's millions of dollars there for St. John Transit, Kodiak Transit, Fredericton Transit that we couldn't spend because the only way you access the federal funding is if you have an initial mover in the province. So from what you're saying, do you think there's reason to believe that a Liberal government, or maybe just from your own personal disposition, that there's a win there for municipalities coming down the pipe in the next government? Will there be less strings attached, or what do you think?
Yes, absolutely. We're doubling these programs. Like, we want to get more money into the hands of proponents, contractors, developers, municipalities, nonprofits. Like, that's why we're developing these programs, because we see it's a problem. Like, when you've got the, Minister of Social Development provincially saying the province should be the last resort to fix the housing crisis, we got a major problem. Like, we're there as government to help solve these problems. And the free market is not going to solve the affordable housing crisis that we're having, especially across New Brunswick. This is a lack of action. And look, this is a lack of action of many governments, successive governments, Liberal, Conservative, what have you. This is a failure of the whole system to be where we're at now, where there is literally dwindling inventory of affordable housing projects. It's scary. We see what's happening with rent increases, and we can certainly talk about that. Like, there has to be a solution. Now, that being said, also, we need a municipality with a plan. We need developers and proponents with a plan. Like, governments just don't, we're going to build housing over there. No, we need the city, and I know you've started that with the paper, to come out and say, this is what we're going to require, and this is our goal. We're going to avail land. We're going to avail land. We're going to avail buildings. We're going to be aggressive with property, or with red tape. We're going to lower red tape. We need the municipality to step and come to me and say, hey, Wayne, what about the provincial building, or what about the federal building on Water Street that's 3/4 empty? Well, Wayne, we would like to talk to you along with the provincial government about having a plan. Like, these things typically don't come from the top down. They come from the ground up. And that starts with the municipalities. And I mean, I say that to you with respect.
It's not there. I get it. And I think, to your point, Wayne, there's a couple things that I see so far as a councillor and how it relates. One, we don't have a strategic plan. So when you look for alignment with some of these initiatives and some of these values from the federal government, provincial government, with a lack of a strat plan, you're kind of left with saying, well, we're here for this money. And then they ask you, well, how does it align with your goals? And you say, well, we want to do good things. Without
Right.
that strat plan, it really is not solid. It's not clear. So
Right.
we'll
But
have that
where
done by December. The
it,
Affordable Action Housing Plan, those are new things. And to your point, one of the things that excites me that I know, there's two things in the platform, and I don't know if you can comment on them around housing, and then we'll move off housing. But
sure.
there's two things in there that excite me in the Liberal platform.
Yeah.
And again, I had conversations like this with Don Paulin with the NDP. I'll have conversations with everybody who has good ideas about solving problems. But in the Liberal platform, there's one around being more intentional to move owners who are sitting on ghosted properties. And I posted 4 buildings today on Loyalist City News Chasers because I'm a sucker for punishment, and I go on Loyalist City News Chasers looking for an argument. And I said, look, everybody's in there freaking out about people losing their property, but what are we going to do about these buildings that could house 9 people? And right now, the city's got to jump through 10 hoops to try to get them freed up, to try to find a developer, to try to work with the province. But there is this clause in the Liberal platform about use it or lose it. If you're in an urban setting and you're sitting on a vacant property, there's measures we're going to put in place to move you off that. What does that look like? How does that impact us? Because I think that's a positive move, because we've got way too many landlords in this city, owners who have either died and their family members don't know they have the property, and it's weird and it's convoluted, it's stuck in legal, or they've just dissolved their company and left because they don't want to be bothered with it anymore, and we can't find them.
Look, I think that the Liberal housing plan, and I mean, there's many facets to it, with respect to the $40,000 tax-free savings, which is almost like the tax-free savings account, where you can, save $40,000 if you're under 40, towards buying a new property. We're investing, millions to repair, renovate homes. We want to ban blind bidding. We want to establish a homeowner's bill of rights. There's many facets to it. But yeah, use it or lose it. That's, to your point, that's a major issue that's happening, and we see it right across the country. Is that we see owners come in, they buy these properties, and then they just sit on them, and they either hope that they go up in value, or they let them fall apart. So, this is one of these things where we're going to start targeting these. We can, our biggest hammer, if you will, is tax, and we can basically disincentivize owners that have these properties that don't renovate or use them, and that's kind of the hammer we have.
Yep. Yeah. I'll get you there. And I guess the other one that's in that Liberal platform, around 1.4 million homes.
Yeah.
I do some rough math, and the rough math leads me to believe that there's 700 to 1,000 units. If you just break down the cross-country distribution of what those units could be, if you look at them from one equitable perspective, and I know that's debatable, but say between 500 and 1,000 units, the Liberal plan to build that many housing. Has the Liberal Party talked about who is going to build those houses? Because from where I sit at City Council, I see all of our construction companies maxed, turning down work. I don't see any big developers coming to St. John for various reasons. It's just it's not a good value proposition to move your whole operation here for a couple of years to get a few hundred buildings. So that's why I think we need coordination from the province. A minister of housing would be ideal, but okay. But how does the Liberal Party see, because I know across country we have a labor shortage in construction. Is there anything being talked about there?
Well, one of the things that we want to do is we want, look, one of the jewels that is in our community is the New Brunswick Community College. And, the New Brunswick Community College can be very quick to react to shortages in labor, in specific skills. So we certainly want to have places like the community college start to train more carpenters, apprentice training, breaks for people to enroll in those type of programs. Look, My father was a carpenter. He worked his whole career at a place. You're probably too young, Brent, to remember, but it was called Murray and Gregory. It was on Douglas Avenue, and that's where Black River Woodworking is now.
Ah, yes. Yep.
The art of woodworking, carpentry, building is becoming a lost art. And certainly, I applaud what you're doing at the the tool library with respect to apprentice training. So, to answer your question, and it's a good question, do we have enough people here today to build what's needed? The answer to that is no. I think we both know that. But I believe if we focus and put the right resources to training people, to training more builders, apprentice training, working with the community college, we can come up with that. And to that point, even further, here's a good example. I had a meeting back, oh my God, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, about housing. And we had people in there, leaders and government and all this stuff. And we're all sitting around, we're like, we need developers. Like, we need people like you, like whoever, to want to build affordable housing, that want to build projects. And there's not enough of them now, but we believe if we avail money, especially through the Rapid Housing Initiative and Federal Co-Investment Fund, it will make it easier for builders to get affordable housing projects off the ground. There is money to be had. The city needs a plan. The city needs to come forth to the province to the feds, the city to the feds, and say, here's what we need in the city of St. John. We want to build whatever that number is, 1,000 units.
Yes.
Here's where we want to build them. Here's how we're going to build them. Okay, federal government, provincial government, this is our ask. And, I see municipalities sit back with the greatest respect, and I'm not just talking about St. John, sit back and kind of like, well, we need affordable housing. Well, it's like, okay, great. Tell us what you want and how you're going to do it. And then we can see how we can fund that. That's what's been missing for sure.
Agreed. And, one of the most encouraging things to happen since I became a councillor was to see, the city manager and his team with Phil Ouellette and growth to develop a affordable housing action plan, which will mean once they're all done, some are en route and some are being developed, but all three major cities in New Brunswick will have an affordable housing action plan by the end of the year or by first of next year. So we're en route, but you're right, that plan isn't there. And I think just to kind of cap this part of the conversation, as I know housing's a hot topic, it's going to be something people vote on. I think in St. John more than anything, I'm a big climate activist, but even the people I talk to, it's palpable where housing is hitting with them. I mean, just today I was talking on Maritime Noon with Bob Murphy about this, and before he had me on to make my little comment about labor force stuff, he was interviewing the lady in St. John, Mary, who has had her rent increased by $1,000. And it's like, this is where we're at now, people. And what does it look like if we only leave housing to the market to look after it? Then we're susceptible and we're fragile as a society and as a community to these changes. And so I think one interesting piece is that I haven't heard anybody talk about, just to kind of leave it, is we have thousands of workers in the oil and gas sector that are going to need to transition in the next 10 years. They already have the skill sets we need to build the homes of the future.
Yes.
Engineers, you name it, they're fairly easily transferable. And so that is one positive point I think that we have to look forward to. And people say, well, you can't fight climate change and solve these issues. Well, actually, if we fight climate change, we might end up solving the housing crisis along the way.
Look, I mean, one thing I learned long ago is if you don't move forward with your own plans and your own solutions and how you want it done, then it's going to be dictated to you, and it may not be the right, the right way you want it to happen. So it's about being proactive It's about having a plan.
Yeah.
And, like I get it all the time. Well, the federal government's got to do this and the federal government's got to, well, okay, but has anybody asked or has anybody looked at what streams are available and how creative they can be? Look, I want to be part of the solution. Our Liberal government knows there's a problem. You've seen our housing announcement. We want to help the city of St. John. I can be that advocate. And I mean, look, I'll just say it. I mean, it is an election. I take exception to anybody saying, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, I sat in the House of Commons and watched the party across from me vote against the Rapid Housing Initiative, vote against the Federal Co-Investment Fund. Like you can't have it both ways. You can't say you're going to fix a housing crisis and vote against direct federal investment in housing. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and to the Conservatives' credit, they have a plan to to put 1 million houses on the market in 3 years, and they have some other stuff. And I plan to ask Mel, if he comes on, those questions about the specifics of that part, because there's some ambiguity there, like there is in all parties. But it's really good to have this conversation where we can see, okay, here's Wayne, here's what he knows about it, here's his mastery of the topic, and we can understand that at least if he's our MP, here's how he's gonna fight for and go about it. So that's good. I wanna switch here to there's actually a question from Twitter that I'm gonna pop up here, but it has to do with a question I was gonna ask anyway. So I figure why not just move it up since you have somebody asking it. We got Jane Murphy who's saying, the Liberal government have committed $400 million to active transportation. What will you? I guess she said he. What will you, Wayne, do to help us see this investment? And what do you see, I guess, as missing to help us achieve that? I just as a backdrop, I just talked to a friend of mine, Ian Froud, who's a councillor in the city of St. John's, Newfoundland, and he talks about the Kelly's Brook Trail, which is this amazing fully protected and then semi-protected bike trail. That's not just for bikes, it's for scooters, it's for people who walk, it's for anybody, but it's mobility laning, we'll call it that, from the university part of St. John Memorial downtown. He said to us, even 2 years ago when they finished that, or a year and a half ago, 80% of that was funded by the federal government. So I'm curious, St. John, we've lost 2 cyclists in the past 12 months here in this city. Certainly a few of us new councillors are really trying to push the envelope on how we can achieve better. But what do you see as missing, and how can we align ourselves as a city to receive that kind of investment?
Well, that project, how many years ago was that project in Newfoundland, Brent?
Kelly's Brook Trail was, I think, 2 years ago, actually just less than 2 years ago. It was just before the pandemic that they finished it. Okay.
Again, that would have been federal money that would have come through the province. The province would have earmarked that. But look, we are coming up with ways. Andy Fillmore, who's a good friend of mine, who's the parliamentary secretary, was the parliamentary secretary of Infrastructure, did an announcement in Halifax with respect to active transportation. And what we are doing federally, again, which is what we talked about at the time, we are availing ways for municipalities to apply directly for funding for active transportation. Bike lanes, trails, what have you. But again, but the question, and I know I sound like I'm repeating myself, but if I went back right now to the city and said to you, well, okay, what has the city applied for active transportation funding? Like where's the city's priorities? Is it to put a bike lane on Chesley Drive? Is it to put a bike lane in Hickey Road? Is it to build a trail? Like the city has to come up with this is what we want to do. I've watched council. I've seen some ideas that I believe Tim O'Reilly has put forth about, these, projects. Some are 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, what have you. But again, the city needs to come up with a specific, here's what we want to do. Look, we want to fund active transportation projects. in municipalities right across the country. We know it's the future. You want to talk about driving down our carbon footprint. You want to talk about, meeting our goals, whether it's our goal of 2030 or 2050. Active transportation, healthy living, people walking, people feeling safe, having drivable bike lanes is critical. We are availing hundreds of millions of dollars for that, but municipalities need to apply, and they need to say, this is what we're putting in. To my knowledge, I'm not sure the city of St. John has applied for any of that funding yet.
I don't know for sure. I know that there was talk of it in the last council, and since we've come on council, we've only seen a final draft of the second tier of Move SJ, which has that. Jane went on to further ask, is this something that you've helped facilitate in your time as an MP?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And just let me make it clear, Jane, and thanks for the question, is that the federal government isn't going to decide to put a bike lane in University Avenue.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. The city's going to say, we are going to do this. Now we're going to apply to the province and the feds to help us do it. But until that happens, federally, we're just kind of like, okay, because if the feds start coming in and funding these projects just because, whatever, Nick or somebody like that wants to do a bike lane here or there, there'd be chaos. There has to be order of how these applications go.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, yes, I want to facilitate that. I want to see us get greener. I want to see less cars on the road. I want us to be healthier. So yes, you absolutely have an ally with me. We've got great proponents here that want to make those projects happen, but the applications have to come in and come up through to us.
Yep. Yeah. And to take your point, Wayne, from what I've seen on council so far, we're missing a few steps compared to what St. John's, Newfoundland had. Yep. It's always frustrating to see that, to see other people further ahead. It's not that our staff haven't been doing hard work, but they've been focused on other areas. So anyway, we won't get into this.
And look, just real quick too, this isn't, but for example, I was approached by a group here that want to build a community building. And they were like, well, there was infrastructure money used in Halifax to build a community building identical to the building we want to do.
Right.
So I dug into it and we checked, and they checked and I checked. And the province of Nova Scotia earmarked infrastructure money for that building in Nova Scotia, which they have every right to do. No problem.
Right.
But we need the province here to earmark that money. Yeah. Again, a lot of these bilats is we put the gas in the car, but the province has to turn the key and spend it.
Yep.
So that's sometimes where you'd say, well, St. John's is doing this. Why can't we in St. John? Well, you can in St. John, but you got to get the province on board too.
Well, and I think that's part of this position paper, like I said, is that the city is looking for I guess a variety of programs, whether it be infrastructure, and or mobility or transportation, you name it. We're looking for funding models that exist that don't rely on the province to be an initial mover, because we could go down that road for a long time. I don't want to miss some of these other questions, but
no, not at all. But just one other point I just want to lay out is for example, this may be a little off topic, but I think it gives context to people, to you and to people watching. I've been told many times, the Fed should fund a duplex or a triplex arena in St. John. So I'm like, oh, okay. Number one, the feds wouldn't do that unless the city prioritized it. But then I go back to say, okay, but what is the city's plan on arenas?
Mm-hmm.
Or what is the city's plan on active transportation or bike trails? Like, I don't mean it to dump on the city, because the city and the people there do a wonderful job. But there has to be a solid plan moving up as to what the city wants and how the federal government can be involved. You know me, I'm available to meet with councillors, the mayor, city manager, city staff, anytime. And let's work through these things and say, look, this is what we want. This is what we're going to prioritize with the province. No, we're not going to, put a sidewalk here, but we want this there. Or no, you're going to close this arena here and we're going to build something here. This is what we need to see.
Yeah.
And then we can say, okay, well, if this is what the city wants, then yeah, we can help fund that.
Yeah, it's just all about that alignment, and I can see your point. All right, let's go on here now. Right now, so this is one that obviously a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah.
We've seen the province come out and say, okay, we're going to have a plan for healthcare.
Yep.
In whatever it is, 3 weeks. Now, I moved here. So I'm from here, obviously. I'm from Blacks Harbor. I moved to St. John in 2011. I lived here for a couple of years. I moved away. I moved back in 2015 with a family, or 2016. And we were on a family doctor's waiting list for 2 years. 2018, we get one. And he was dismissed for whatever reasons from Horizon Health. Now we're back on a waiting list. What's missing here, Wayne? I know that everybody's there's all this conversation about the federal government not funding healthcare like it used to, or not into the same percentage. There's a lot of these nuanced discussions happening, and I think it's lost on people as to what do we need to be successful on the healthcare docket? Because I don't buy that we need more two-tier systems.
No.
And I don't think that that's exactly what Aaron O'Toole means when he talks about private providers. I don't think he's saying we need a two-tier system, but there's a sense that, well, we need to proliferate some of the private sector here to help us.
Yeah.
I don't buy that fully, but I'm wondering what's missing and what's in that platform.
Well, a few things. Look, like, I am obviously dead against any two-tiered system. That is not Canadian. That is just absolutely not acceptable. Once we go down that road, it creates haves and have-nots, the ability to pay for services. And, obviously as a Liberal Party, we want to get to a point where, we have, a healthy system, with pharmacare, dental care, what have you. We started a pilot in PEI with respect to pharmacare, to kind of test some things there. And then, the plan will be, given how that works, to roll that out across the country. With respect to the healthcare system, and to your point, I know there's volleying back and forth. I know, we need to step up and fund more, parts of healthcare. We came out with a mental health initiative here last week, where we're going to spend, $10 billion over the next 5 years, specifically to mental health care, because we know we have a crisis there. I can't speak to, like, I remember the big hubbub when Stephen Harper was going to cut healthcare transfers by 6%. And, that was going to, hurt New Brunswick to the tune of $73 million. And look, it's not just them. It's us. It's understanding what the provinces need. And again, I know there's always back and forth between the provinces and the feds. The provinces say we need more for healthcare. The feds say, well, we want to make sure it's efficient and adequately run. Then you have Premier Higgs, talking about, the inefficiencies in Horizon and Vitality, and rural places may need to close, and so on and so forth. So, we've pledged to invest, excuse me, $3 billion immediately to hire 7,500 more doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, create more spots, incentivize more people to enroll in these programs. Brent, I don't have the solution. I know that the federal government is a part of it. Mm-hmm. I know that we talk about that and advocate for it every time I'm in caucus. I believe that our investment in the mental health initiative is key to alleviate problems there. And I believe that, we do need to work with the provinces and the premiers to make sure we find that balance. I think we can all agree that what's happening right now with respect to wait lists, a lack of family doctors, is a crisis. And it's more than just throwing money at it. It's coming up with the right solution. And I think that's availing more spaces, training more nurses. What's happening right now to our nurses and LPNs it's terrible. It's a crisis. They're overworked. They're underpaid. And until we sit down as both levels of government, we're not going to solve this. And, I acknowledge there's a problem. And I know that we need to sit down with the provinces to come up with the right solution.
Yeah. Okay. We're coming up on 53 minutes. We've had about we've had 37 people chiming in here, watching between 3 different platforms. So that's great. Thank you, everybody, for watching along. And I know that, Wayne, you'll make yourself available to people who have questions if we don't get to them tonight. Yeah. There's, another ballot box issue, right? Healthcare is one, housing's a big one.
Yep.
And then it comes to climate change. So I want to frame the last piece of the conversation on climate change a little bit. It's top of mind for almost all Canadians.
Yeah.
Many Canadians are patiently waiting for the government to lead us into a more ambitious plan.
Yeah.
I would think, to reduce emissions and create more local sustainability. Now, when it comes down to actionable items that trickle down to St. John, in the climate action plans that I've seen, there's a couple that strike me, and I'm wondering, I maybe you can comment on the Liberal Party's position on it, but there's one piece there that the NDP talked about, or at least I talked about Don, and I don't see it referenced specifically in the Liberal platform. I know that the Liberal platform have a very strong stance on emitting emission reductions and putting a price on carbon.
Yeah.
On the topic of repatriating supply chains, and what I mean by that is bringing home those industries that we currently have to bring in from other countries that make products for us, and finding ways to put them to work in Canada. Is that something the Liberal Party is talking about? Is there anything on the platform for that? If so, what would it look like on that topic? Because I think we can all agree that shipping things internationally, like I'm looking around here at the tool library and I'm seeing a drill, and the battery had its lithium mined in the Congo, and it was sent to France to be put into refined in France, sent to China to be put into a case, and then put into a tool, and then sent to San Francisco and driven across the country to St. John. It's ludicrous. I know we can't mine lithium everywhere, but it's just a simple example of, like, we really need to figure out a better way to produce things locally. Are we talking about that? Is that part of the climate solution? Like, what's your thinking on that?
It is, and we do talk about that. That we certainly want to be able to, produce, source things locally. Number one, I think our climate plan. And I always kind of I smile lately when we talk about, climate action, a price on pollution, because, it wasn't that long ago. I was literally the only person elected, I'll qualify that, that talked about a price on pollution. And of course I had, the conservatives and others, we got to repeal, we're going to cancel the carbon tax, and we're going to, not price pollution and all those things. And, I couldn't go anywhere without people. You're going to ruin this city and you're going to do this, and the Liberals will be the end of the country and all this stuff. And now, I mean, it's you wouldn't not think about climate action and a climate plan. So, two things. Like, we want to move forward for sure. To answer your first question, we do want to move forward in collaboration with key trading partners, like the United States, EU, and make sure that we, have border carbon adjustments to imports from countries that aren't doing their part to reduce. Like, we want to make sure that we're doing our part in trade agreements.
Well, that's if I can pick you up on that, Wayne.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one, because I mean, not that I know people will know that I ran for the Greens, right? Provincial Greens, not federal Greens. Yep. But I know that the federal Green leader, Annamie Paul, when she first became the leader of the Greens, and I know that party's struggling, but that was one of the first things she talked about was climate border adjustments, and just to kind of frame that for people, that's basically saying, look, if you produce a shirt in any country, and you have zero climate regulations, and you have no regulatory restraints on that shirt being produced, and we produce a shirt here, but we have stiff climate regulations, environmental protections, and whatever, we're going to charge more for your product to come into our country to be sold. Is that in the platform? Is that something Liberals are talking about now?
Yes.
I missed it if it was. Interesting.
Yes. It's in the platform. It's something we want to move forward with. Like, I think, I mean, look at Thomas Mulcair talking about our climate plan. One of the leaders of the Green Party, his name escapes me, provincially.
Schreier. Yeah, Mike Schreier.
Yeah, talking about our climate plan. We have a plan, Brent, that is, I think, aggressive, achievable, attainable, and realistic. And, I was into a debate the other day. There's some decisions you have to make when you're in government. Somebody on the NDP side said the other day, well, you guys, 4 years ago bought a pipeline. And I was like, yeah, well, okay. And Rachel Notley, the NDP premier, was one of the biggest proponents of that pipeline. So, it goes beyond just the Liberals are bad at this or it's about coming up with a plan that has balance, that's aggressive. Carbon border adjustments are key. Driving our emissions down. I mean, we want to reduce carbon emissions by 45% by 2030. Yeah. We're having, more incentives for EVs. We want to be carbon neutral by 2050. These are things that we need to do. We are in a coastal community. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to feel the impacts of climate more than us here in St. John, New Brunswick. And we all saw what ACAP did with respect to, rising sea levels, what impact that's going to have on our city. Mm-hmm. And I want to be, in a third term, I want to be a leader in that. I want to tell people that we can live in an industrial or, what used to be a major industrial city and still be climate champions. Mm-hmm. Still talk about driving our climate, our carbon footprint down. Big industry in this city in this riding are starting to realize that they need to get on board.
Yeah.
And I want to be that person to say, look, we can do this. We can create jobs, and we can create a long-term, more resilient and robust economy by doing the right things. But we need to take climate action now. We see what's happening in BC. Mm-hmm. We see countries like Greece literally on fire. We see flooding. We see what just happened in New Orleans. Like, we need to act. And, I ask people, what government, what party is going to do it and do it right? And I mean, again, not to be overly partisan, but I'll throw it in. I mean, how does a Conservative Party of Canada pass they can't pass a resolution that says climate change is real? And I know people say, oh, well, that was just a resolution in the wording, but still.
Well, it's a fair point, and I mean, again, I plan to talk with Mel. I'll give him every fair shake I can. But when the Conservatives lost the seats in the last election, it wasn't the more right-wing Conservatives that lost their seats. It was the progressives like Lisa Raitt, right? And I mean, some people are saying this is the first progressive conservative platform we've seen since 1984. Right now, it remains to be seen how the rest of the party, and who like you said, they said as a party, no, we're not going to recognize climate change, even though Aaron O'Toole, their leader, was pushing them for that. So it is confusing. There's no question.
Yeah, look, people are educated. People can read the programs and the platforms.
Yeah.
Like, the more you burn, the more you earn, like a climate credit account, and not really, in my opinion, anyway, people can judge the plans.
Yeah.
But look, I ask people to compare the candidates, compare what we stand for, and compare our parties and what they stand for, and they can make a decision.
Well, I think you've helped us do that tonight, Wayne. It's 1 hour and 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I will get us up here. There hasn't been any other questions really that we didn't already answer in some way, or touch on. So, but like I say, I won't speak for you, but I know that you're accessible. I know that people can get a hold of you through Facebook, through Twitter.
Yeah.
Is there anything coming up that you want to tell people about that you've got going on the next couple of days, or?
No, I think, look, we're knocking on doors.
Yep.
Spreading our message. And, I think what it boils down to is, distinct choices for constituents in St. John Rothesay.
Yep.
From all candidates, not just Mel and I, it's all candidates that are running. Who do you want to lead us into the next 4 years? Who can get the job done? Who is best suited to advocate and deliver funding, whether it's infrastructure funding, money for heritage, what have you? Who's best suited to do that? And like I say, look, I'm putting my name out there. I respect everybody that runs. I mean, obviously, there's a variety of ideologies and viewpoints, and may the best person win.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, Wayne. I'm going to sign us off, and hopefully everybody has a good night. The next candidate that we've got coming up will be, as far as I know, it's Nick from the PPC on next Monday. I'm still waiting to hear back from Mel and Ann from the Ann McAllister from the Greens. So we'll see if they get back to us. And we've got English language debate next week and TVI debate tonight. So if any of you are hardcore political fanatics, there'll be some great Twitter reports, and I know I'm watching the Hurly Burly, the Curse of Politics podcast. Those guys are hilarious to listen to.
Yeah.
So.
No, listen.
Anyway,
thanks for doing this. Anyone that's following knows that I'm in a major battle here, and any support I can get is much appreciated.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Wayne.
Thanks, Brent.
Have a good night.
Yeah. Bye-bye.